Mike and I were together in what's called the Maneuver Training Command, Fort Dix, which was probably the Army Reserve's best kept secret. I loved it so much I stayed 18 years. Probably detrimental in my career, but boy, I loved it. Anyway, we each had our own little cubicles. We were divided up by different teams, and his was the armor team.
Infantry.
Infantry? You were infantry.
I was too big for a tank.
Okay. But you had the neatest models of tanks. You know, you walk into his office and, you know, here's the entire Wehrmacht collection, you know, of models of German tanks. And you can see that's his particular hobby. For those of you who go to the Meadowland shows when they existed, as you walked in the door, you went to the right, you went about 2 tables. His table was always there. And he had different items for sale, and he was, of course, searching for others for his collection. So, without much further ado, I want you to have Mike come here and give us a little presentation on what to look for in regards to collecting uniforms and anything from dealing with the Second World War. Mike?
Just a little background. I started out when I was 13, so that's almost 40 years ago. Not with German stuff, but with American patches for a Cub Scout badge. You know, why the patches were made, why the design existed. My uncle used to make them. I used to get the seconds that came off the line. He gave me those. Then I started pestering all the military posts by writing to everybody, you know, for a patch and getting them. So I have about 5,000 American patches in my collection. My dad was in World War II, brought home a German helmet, dagger, and armband. Then other friends of his saw my collection of patches. They saw the few German things. Oh, I got some of the stuff at home, so it snowballed and it's keeping me poor. But this is about 1/3 of the German uniforms I have. What I was going to talk about here is looking at what's original, what's been restored, and how to look out for the reproductions that are out there, because there are a lot of unscrupulous dealers out there that and some are getting pretty good at making up the uniforms to make them look real. You also have the Hollywood uniforms, where guys have taken a German private and all of a sudden becomes a field marshal. And there's certain things you can look at to tell whether it's good or not. I made notes I can remember as I'm getting old. If you're going to collect the stuff, you have to decide really what your standards are. Do you want it to be original as issued by regulation, is one thing. Or original, restored, and there's a qualification there, because a lot of times the German soldiers could take their uniforms, especially the privates. The officer uniforms are pretty much all tailor-made, so they fit like a glove. And the enlisted, though, it was off the rack. So what a lot of times they would do, especially early on, they had a uniform, it sort of fit, but they wanted to look better so they could get the girls. They'd go there, get it tailored, move the pockets up, and do some modifications to it. Also enhance some of the insignia on it that looked a little better. If you notice on this one, it's a sergeant's uniform, but he was a standard bearer. That's what this patch is for. But that's a bullion eagle. Normally, only the German officers would wear that. But since he was a standard bearer, it was for parades and walking out, he had his uniform upgraded with the bullion eagle. Same unit with a combat uniform. He's an officer, but he's got either an enlisted eagle on it. Again, it would make more sense because if you're out in the field, that bullion eagle is going to get torn apart pretty quick and rot, and to keep up. Also, when I said by regulation after the war, or I should say modified, in Germany when I was there, you weren't allowed to display a swastika at all. So if you had a uniform, you couldn't display it like this. You had to, either they'd put a cloth over the top of it, or a lot of times they'd be cut off. If you were lucky, when they cut it off, they put it inside the pocket, so when you brought it home, you'd have it resewn. Now, again, that's going to be your call. Is that a restoration, or just putting it back like it was because somebody, by the laws, had to have it done that way? You know, there's a lot of fine lines when people call, so you have to make a judgment in that point. Also, too, during the war, early on, it was green collars that came out. As the war progressed, they went from the patch pockets to a flat pocket, then to almost the ice jacket at the very end. Early in the war, there were dark green collars. Later on, it was just a regular green as the rest of the uniform. However, a lot of guys didn't like the look of the regular collar, so they had a dark green collar. In fact, even though this guy's an officer, This is an enlisted uniform. Well, the officers always had two collar clasps here to hold the collar together. Enlisted only one. But during the war, probably this guy needed a uniform. His thing either got worn up, shrapnel, who knows. Got an enlisted uniform, had probably the field tailor, had the green badge cloth collar to it, and the officer insignia. Plus also he's a German Cross and Gold winner. That's sort of like our Distinguished Service Cross. From all the medals and stuff on it, I have this one tracked down right now to 4 possible guys. Unfortunately, the only other thing I can do is find out heights and weights and who it fits, and I can't really find that out from the German government yet. Also, too, a lot of the enlisted, I don't have it here, would use a pointed collar, which was not by regulation, but it looked sharper. So you have to say, when you're looking at a uniform, what kind of standards are you holding yourself to as you're going to collect, buy it. And looking at the German uniforms too, look at the overall condition as far as determining whether it's real or not. In the German Army, this is the first lieutenant. The lieutenant was here, plain shoulder board, no pips on it. When he got promoted, 1 pip. That'd be a first lieutenant. 2 pips, be a captain. Then they went to, as a major, intertwined, like bullion intertwined. Again, plain would be just the major, 1 pip, 2 pips, then you went up to general's rank. But when you're looking at these, like a uniform, if you see a beat-up uniform, I got a very good example right here. This thing has been through the war. If you see a uniform in this condition with brand new shoulder boards on it, I'd question it. It's probably been restored, or the guy was a private or a low-ranking sergeant. In this case, that's what the tresser on the collar means. But look at the board. Same thing with an officer. You find a uniform that's beat up, but there's a brand new, especially if it's a first lieutenant or captain, new boards, it's probably been replaced. They have to replace it when they went to major, but as an enlisted, or otherwise you're just going to add a pip to it. See some other notes here. So also, been looking at a uniform. A parade uniform usually not going to get a whole lot of wear because it's only worn certain occasions downtown. Once the war started, this uniform pretty much just hung in the closet. They weren't really using these things. A lot of them, in fact, were converted to combat uniforms where they cut the cuffs off, all the decorations here. Some of the other things to try to tone it down. They'd either make inside pockets, or I even had one that had fake pockets. It just had the flaps. You open the flap up, there was no pocket underneath, but it made it look like it was supposed to be the uniform. But if you're going to go for a uniform that's field worn, look for where you find normal field wear. If the guy's out there fighting and stuff, usually the elbows are going to be scuffed up. On this uniform, later on if you want to look at it, you can see there's a repair to the cuff handle and how it's worn. So he's probably crawling around, even though he's a pioneer, that's an engineer. They were also used as frontline troops for breaking through. So he probably did his fair share of crawling around, and that's how the uniform got a little destroyed there. If you don't see the normal wear pattern, it's also under the arms. That's, when you walk along, that's where it's going to go. So look for, like when if you have a jacket at home and you wore it for a long time, you know where the wear patterns are. So look for pretty much the same wear patterns. Also, another good place to look for is the back of the collar. That's usually going to be worn out in the back from the field wear as it's going, because they wore these things and really didn't get too many showers and get a change. When they did get a shower, maybe in a month, 2 months out in the field, then they could get their uniform bloused. I don't have examples of repro insignia here, but if any of you get into the shows or do collect the stuff, some are really bad. So if you see that stuff popped onto it, it's a Hollywood uniform, what I call a Hollywood uniform, or somebody just putting it together and it's not worth the price to pay. Buttons. It sounds strange, but usually, like this uniform here, when it came out of the tailors, he's going to have the same group of buttons that he bought from a supplier. So they're all going to be marked the same on the back. So if you find a uniform that every button doesn't match, odds are the guy didn't lose that many damn buttons that been replaced like that. A combat uniform, yeah, some of the buttons are going to be missing, probably at one time or another. But if every one of them is mismatched, again, The uniform was probably totally stripped down. The guy just took a bunch of buttons, put them together. So that's another thing to look at as far as determining whether you got a good uniform or a bad restoration job. If there were patches and things put on it, look for fading. This uniform here was not a standard issue. This was probably made by a field tailor. It's made out of Russian ground cloth or tent material. The collar added on dark green on the front. When I got this one, the eagle was missing and the foreign volunteer sleeve shield was missing. This is a sniper's patch. You usually don't see them on here, but this is in the wrong place. It should be down here. But I got this out of a flea market when I was in Germany. But the one good portion, if you look, and it's hard for you to see out there, but where it's coming loose, you can see the fading. Now it's kind of hard to reproduce fading for the, when you put a patch on there and fade the uniform uniformly and leave this color underneath. I'm going to ask you though, if you do come up here and look at it later, please don't pry it up. I'll show it to you, so I don't want the patch ripped off. But if you do, if you see a uniform has something like that, look for the fading underneath, because it's been there for a while. It should be. Or again, the guy could have been promoted, made a Obergefreiter, got the sleeve chevron added on later on. But again, it's usually that's one good sign or a good way to check. Also, even wear to the buttonholes. If you got a new uniform or you get a new jacket, the buttonholes are all perfect. But the more you unbutton and unbutton wear, the buttonholes will stretch out and there'll be wear around it. And most of these ones that are field worn, you're going to see the buttonholes are really enlarged, and sometimes they'll pop open. In the pockets and in the cuffs. If these uniforms, if you're in the field and you are in combat, or even just in the field or in a training exercise, dirt is going to get in your pockets and in the cuffs. So that's one good area to look at. A lot of German uniforms have these open cuffs. Look into the bottom, see if you find dust, lint, a little bit of trash, tree, pine needles, etc. Also in the pockets.
A friend of mine got one of these. He found them in the General Post Office in Munich, and in the cuff was the farmhouse ticket for getting out for Berlin.
That's a lot of the officer cuffs. A lot of times, this was a pocket that they would use for their field, like orders and things. It was an easy place to store rather than doing the Colombo. There's always checking the pocket for a pencil. Or they'd need something right away. That was a cuff pocket that they used a lot of times. But also in the pockets, if you're putting things in and out, dirt and stuff's going to get in. Guys have pipes, you have cigarettes. There's going to be a little bit of dust in there. You find a combat uniform that's totally clean. Either somebody went in there with a vacuum and cleaned it out, or somebody just put it together. And some of the uniforms you'll see, I've seen, Swiss uniforms are very similar in material to the German uniform. So you look inside for that little, like the Swiss flag has a big cross. A lot of times they're inked in there. So you have to get used to it, but put it this way. You have to learn what the different materials that the Germans use for their jackets. Listed pretty much for standardized wool. The officer uniforms, in a lot of cases, were tailored. Officer uniforms too. It's what I call the pajamas insert in the sleeves. They would line the sleeves down for an officer's uniform. The enlisted uniforms that were off the rack did not have the lining in the sleeves, unless the enlisted guy paid extra, and had it made up. But that's another sign to look for. So if you got an officer uniform that doesn't have it, it's either one, an enlisted uniform that was converted, or two, it's a bogus uniform. Another thing under the collars, again, when you come up, a lot of reinforcement was done under here. Because that's a place that would normally wear awful quick. You get tugged. Look under there, it's like a zigzag stitching. Also look, there's the collar tabs on there. Sometimes you'll see an outline of another collar tab that used to be there, which says hey, somebody upgraded, either it was bad and the guy took it off and replaced it, or the guy's upgrading it, or Hollywooding the uniform. You know, not every German got an Iron Cross, second class, and first class, and Knight's Cross like you see in the movies. Okay, look for another thing that sometimes is a good giveaway is if the uniform has movie markings. I'm not saying American movies, but in Europe, a lot of theaters and the movies there after the war used captured uniforms. That movie, in fact, the World War I movie, All Quiet on the Western Front, most of those pickle helmets and everything else was real stuff that was left over from the war that they used for that movie. After the war, a lot of the things went into theaters. They'll have a marking for the different theaters, theater companies, even the movie theaters over in Germany had them, and they'd use them over again. And a lot of them are coming out of even Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Russia used a lot of the captured uniforms too when they made their propaganda movies, and they won the war movie. But they'd use a lot of the stuff was original German uniforms. So in a way, that's a good sign. Unfortunately, a lot of the dealers or unscrupulous people have found that out and have been adding some theater markings to it. The breast eagles, like I said, is not a killer. Since they were taken off, had to be taken off in Germany, you could be arrested for throwing a swastika out on the street. So a lot of them are cut off. If they're sewn back on, to me, that's not a killer. But it should be the appropriate type of eagle put on. But again, you have to use your discretion. If, okay, he's a senior NCO, he might have the bullion eagle on it, or if it's a dress uniform, probably a bullion eagle, but if it's a combat uniform, odds are an enlisted guy's not going to have a bullion eagle on a combat uniform. A lot of people use this black light as a discriminator, saying, well, if the thing glows, it's bad. That's not the case. Germans, during the war, a lot of the soap had phosphate in it, so if they washed their uniform with that soap, it's going to glow. If you brought the uniform home and your either mother or your wife saw this nasty, stinky uniform, you'd probably either have you throw it in the garbage or wash it. So if you washed it, it could be with the phosphate soap, or if it's been dry cleaned. Or even if it's not been dry cleaned, a nice uniform, but you put it in your closet next to a uniform that has been dry cleaned. If you know, when you get the uniform or a suit out of the cleaners, has that smell to it, it'll off-gas onto the uniform. What I look for is if you find the uniform and it totally glows, if everything looks right, it probably was washed. If just the uniform doesn't glow, but all the patches, the collar insignia, shoulder boards for enlisted, the eagle, and any rank insignia glows, odds are, hey, why is the add-on stuff all glowing and the rest of the uniform not? Stay away from it, but some people live and die by that black light. And like I said, if they had the soap, that's not a killer. As the war progressed too, things went downhill. This is a propelled artillery unit. Same with that one. But this one here, when you come up later, if you want to look, the material and the insides of this are totally different. This is more like, as the war progressed, the wool a lot of times was not the good wool from the beginning of the war. They used a mixture of regular wool that had horsehair in it, some nylon, some fibers and other stuff. I have another uniform home that I didn't bring out because it's on a mannequin. I mean, you just touch it, you feel like they got poison ivy. It's so itchy because there's hardly any natural material in it. This one is questionable, just because it was probably done very late in the war. I've seen overcoats and stuff that were cut down. Another collector said, yeah, it could possibly be a very late war piece if they had some extra overcoats. They used that material to cut it down to it. Other people say it's fake. The reason I have it in my collection, when I was down in Georgia, that's where I got this one. And the guy said he has a German rifle with a scope on it. I said, oh great, sniper rifle, this is what I'd like to get. So I go down to rinky-dink town of Georgia to see this guy. And the rifle did have a scope on it. And it was a 98K. And I say was because he cut it down, lost a lot of parts, sporterized it, and put some Weaver scope on it. Did one hell of a bad job drilling into the metal. So now it had a scope on it, but it's not a German scope. The rifle, to me, is worth nothing because it's just now a piece of junk. But his daddy brought it home and did the job. And he had other German stuff along with it, some medals, a hat, and that uniform. So I figured, hey, all the other stuff is right. This could possibly be a good piece. This one I know is a good piece. So a lot of times you have to, don't buy it, the first uniform you see, look around, see what other people have, try to make some comparisons, and then start, learn what to look for, what the danger signs are, make a better purchase so you don't get burned. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I was burned a lot when I first started collecting the things because it looked good, which I didn't know. I'm still not an expert now. I don't get fooled as much as I used to, but you're still going to get fooled. Best thing I can say is if you're going to buy something, show it to some other people that you know are collectors of the things, or if you can go to some good museums, they'll let you get in there and see some of the stuff, compare the originals that you know are original, and compare it with the guy is selling. A little difficult here to show the little things. If you do want to come up or you have any questions or want to look at some of the uniforms, I'll be happy to give you my opinion or what I'm looking at. It's a little tough to show you some of the stitchings and things like that. Does anybody have any questions of me?
Could you just describe various uniforms and what their functions were and some of the decorations?
Oh, sure. This is a parade dress uniform. The patch on the sleeve here is for the standard bearer. So if it was a senior sergeant, which is this rank of 1/5, that's a Hauptfeldwebel. But he was probably one of, a fast mover, if you will. Usually the better guys, like in the Civil War, it was an honored position to be carrying the flag. The cuff title on here says Gross Deutschland. That was initially a regiment. It was an army division, but it was probably, for a German army division, it was twice the size of the normal German army division. And because it was, quote, elite. And they did have the better fighters, they got better equipment. This again, Gross Deutschland. He's a black is for pioneer, engineer. The cross on here, the Germans used to call it the Spiegeleier, which is the fried egg, because that's what it looked like. But that's comparable to the Distinguished Service Cross, the American Army. The ribbon here is for the Iron Cross Second Class. It was given out with the medal, but they never really wore the medal in the field uniform, just in the ribbon and we go in the buttonhole. Iron Cross First Class, like our Silver Star. That would be the Bronze Star. It's a General Assault badge. Sort of like the Combat Instruments badge. The Germans had it for the Panzer, Panzer Grenadier, artillery, flak artillery. It's a qualification badge where you had to be in so many assaults in order to get it. The Black Wound badge is for a wound. Ribbon here is for a War Service Cross, the Russian Front, or what the Germans call the Frozen Meat Medal, and the West Wall Medal. These two are screwbacks, which again are not the normal issue. It'd be something that would be private purchased. And these things have been on so long, when you take it out, the uniform has basically been pulled into the back of the patch, or the badge. You can see that. And the other thing about the German Army, like the American Army, you can get a Bronze Star, and you get an oak leaf cluster for the Bronze Star, and a second oak leaf cluster. German Army, no, you had to get the Iron Cross Second Class. Then if you did something else, a Valor, it had to be better than the first one. You had to be put in, then you could get the Iron Cross First Class, Silver Star. Then went from there, the German Cross in Gold and the Knight's Cross. But you couldn't get, like, just jump on a grenade where here in America, save your buddies. In America, you get a Medal of Honor. In Germany, you're probably going to get a Black Wound badge and a Bronze Star. It's just the way they work things. On this one, it's for the foreign volunteer unit. A lot of Russians joined the German army because they thought the Germans were liberating them from the communists. The patch here is a sniper badge for, I think this one's 15 kills. Normally they didn't wear these things out in the field, mainly because when you got captured being a sniper, your life expectancy as a POW wasn't very that long. You were probably not going to make it to the POW cage. So very few of these. I've yet to see another uniform with this on in person. I've seen one other photograph, but it's down here. By regulation, it's supposed to be worn down on the cuff. Right up and down. armored artillery unit, the red donating that. If it had a patch here with like a skull in it, that would be for the assault gun, which is sort of like a tank but with no turret. The cuff title here, Africa, the guy was a veteran of the Africa Corps. The ribbons, again, the Iron Cross second class and the Russian front ribbon. Other loops here for badges, I just didn't put them all on, they carry them along. See that one? This is Africa Corps. Not everything was Africa Corps just because it's tropical. The green or the tan color, it would be green and bleached out to it more like a tan. They were worn in southern France, Italy, Greece, southern Russia. This uniform here has these skulls on it. People think that when they see a skull that it's an SS. No, the skulls on it, in this case, designate that it was a anti-tank unit. So it would be a pack howitzer to knock out tanks or other weapons that they use. That's why they had the pink color, was still pink Panzer, because anti-tank was part of the tank. It doesn't have any cuff titles. Normally if you saw a cuff title on it, it would have Africa Corps, then you know it's an Africa Corps uniform. But once they got out of the Africa Corps, that cuff title went off and the Africa cuff title was awarded to them. This is the Major Panzer, but with the A, stylized A. That's for Alf Clarence for reconnaissance. He's a World War I veteran. That's the black and white ribbon here is a World War I Iron Cross second class. The metal eagle on it, in World War II, he was, again, cited for valor and got, this would be the Iron Cross second class for World War II, so they put that on. Conversely, if you had an Iron Cross first class, and he got this in World War I, you got it again in World War II, basically this would be the same thing here, but it'd be riding on top of the Iron Cross first class. This guy was probably older since he was a World War I vet, even if he was, say, at the end of the war, 17 in there, you have to figure he's in his 30s, and so he probably was in this unit for a while and probably got mustered out for old age. This uniform is a little unusual. It's a mountain troops uniform. That's what this patch, the Edelweiss on it, stands for. The light green is for Gewehrjäger. The ribbons here is also unusual. You usually only find up to 2 ribbons in the buttonhole. This one has 3, the Russian front, Iron Cross, and a War Service Cross. And the 2 strips here are for single destruction and destruction of the tank. And that was not using a anti-tank, cannon. Or what a lot of times to get this, you ran up to the tank with a sticky mine, threw it on, ran up close to the tank, threw a mine onto the treads to blow it up. Use a bunch of grenades. They also used gasoline can, throw it on the back, shoot some holes, or went into the back of the tank and set up a fire.
Combat with the tank.
Yeah, and you had to have a pair of brass ones to get this thing here. This guy has 2, which is a lot to me. I saw a picture in one of the books. The guy had 21 of them. Whoa. So to do that 21 times and survive the war. In fact, I have a book here that shows the pictures on it. This is wrong though. By regulation, this should be on top of this. But I'm assuming this guy, the patch is on, he's not going to move the patch, keep moving around, so they just put him down below. I've seen there's a picture in the book there of an SS guy, instead of wearing it here, he's got it down below on the cuff title, the SS where the cuff title's here. There's another picture of an army soldier, instead of on this sleeve, he's wearing it that sleeve. They did make mistakes. This is closer to the end of the war, like I was telling you, the dark green collar. This is as the war progressed, they just used the regular uniform cloth for the collar. It doesn't look as sharp as a dark green collar. This guy's just a private though. Also, the pioneers enlisted, it's still early enough where they kept using the pleated pocket. As the war progressed, that was a little extra cloth, so they just made a flat pocket to it. It just saved a little time from doing this and also a little bit of cloth. This is what they call the drill tunic. Mainly, initially it was supposed to be like you're working in the motor pool. You didn't want to get your other uniforms really greased up and dirty. You're doing fatigue details, picking the rocks, cutting the grass. It was a lightweight uniform, cotton. and could be washed easily. But in the southern portions of the battlefields, again, southern France, Italy, southern Russia, wearing a heavy wool uniform was probably not the most enjoyable thing, especially when you're getting shot at. So at least these are a little cooler, you could work a little better. So they converted a lot of these to use as combat tunics. This one though should have what they call generic tags, collar tabs. It shouldn't have these pink stripes on by regulation. But they had the things, they put them on. The shoulder boards here are mismatched. But again, a lot of the stuff was in the, when they made the stuff was in bins in the depot. They just grabbed a couple of them. So it's not uncommon to find mismatched shoulder boards on uniforms. This one is another field-made uniform. Again, for a mountain troop. They had some cloth probably made by the tailor. The buttons here, the buttonholes are hidden. But as you can see, I can almost just, when I pull on it, they just pop out. But it was an initial attempt to have a camouflage uniform for in the field. And he was a private. That's what this thing is, but a very crudely made, if you will. But it served the purpose. But again, you're not going to see this really in a book. You'll see pictures that look like it. They did have some, but the German army, they, just like the American army too, they adapted. In case you don't know, the Eisenhower Jacket, that was initially made to go inside the field jacket as a layer for warmth. And they cut down a lot of times. In fact, the guy from my dad's division, in the supply, he's the one that did the first one of those. It was cutting the guy's 4 pockets tunics down, but you're not going to wear that in combat. So he's making that for the winter time. Eisenhower saw that it was a neat thing. He adopted it, so then it became an Ike jacket. Any questions I can answer more if that's a quick down and dirty?
Thank you.
I know it might sound a little confusing on the stuff, but it's a little, for the small stuff there to see from the back, it's a little tough to see. But if you want to come up and look at things, that'd be fine. I'll try to answer what I can. If not, then I'll pack up and leave.
The SS officer uniforms, they had different insignias, right?
Yeah, the SS on their collars, instead of having this here on one side, they would have an SS, or if it was like Totenkopf division, would have a skull, and then the ranks were also worn on the left collar and also on their shoulder boards. And it was not really a German traditional thing. It just came when they established the SS, they came up with these strange looking, different, they weren't called lieutenants. There were Sturmbannführers and Obersturmführers, and it got a little confusing. The only way you could tell the rank, they still wore the same. If they had one pip on it, you knew the guy was a first lieutenant equivalent. But he wasn't called an Oberleutnant. He was, I think, an Obersturmführer. So I'm just not up on the SS ranks. I don't really. The SS stuff I have was given to me by vets. Too much of the SS stuff has been reproduced, and prices that these people ask for is out of this world. And it's really just the same uniform. If I took, well, this uniform here, traded out that insignia. In fact, if you want to come up later and look, or you pass it around, there's an SS dot Southern tunic. But what the guy did is he took the SS wore the eagle on the sleeve here, not on the pocket like the Army. This guy took the sleeve eagle from here, put it on his right breast pocket. You can see in the picture. If I saw this uniform at a show, I wouldn't touch it. But here's a picture of this guy wearing it. He probably needed a uniform. They gave him that thing, and he just said, okay, I'll just modify it, put the Army eagle here, because he's wearing an Army hat. At the end of the war, he said, if you're freezing, you need some clothing here, take any clothing you can get. And that's where it gets confusing. Like I said, if I had it, if I got this, I'd want it from a vet, I'd want to have a picture of him holding it, and a letter from him saying, this is what I wore. If I saw this at a show, I'd say, somebody really put some piece of crap together, but here's photographic evidence that it did exist. So you're going to find stuff like that that's real, but it's not in the books. Anything else I can help you with?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Embedded inside the design every now and then, okay, when you see in the pocket here, a nice marine, but they also have embedded in the cloth every now and then a little thing that says Eagle. Yeah, there it is. USMC. Okay, so now the Army's not going to wear it, the Air Force is not going to wear it, the Serbians aren't going to wear it.